Good morning. Thank you all from the members of the media for joining us here today, as well as the many people standing behind me, and to Jen, Paul, and the many community members who have stepped up in so many ways. I thank you all not only for what you did during what has been the worst time I know for Denare Beach, but coming together soon after to demand accountability and action from this government. We're here today because the people of Denare Beach were failed by the Sask Party government, not just before or during this fire, but in the days and weeks that followed. What we're asking for today is simple: accountability and action. Scott Moe and Tim McLeod didn't know exactly when the wildfires were going to start in Saskatchewan, but what they did know was when that the first fire broke out, is that they were already short 4 water bombers, and they did nothing to backfill that and make a contingency plan. Let me be very clear. This isn't the fault of the pilots, engineers, or anyone on the front lines of these fires over the course of this fire season who operate and maintain the aircraft and who have fought valiantly in this community. We know that they did everything that they could have with the resources that they had. Our firefighters, our pilots, our ground crews, we are beyond grateful for them. Those people raised the alarm. The warning signs were there, but the Sask Party ignored them. Scott Moe and Tim McLeod failed to have a plan, not just to deploy the resources that we did have, but to bring the additional support that was clearly needed as wildfire season began. We've got a clear example of 2 radically different responses, one from Premier Wab Kinew in the Manitoba government, and one from Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party. The folks standing here with me knew this fire was a threat to their community, especially with no rain in the forecast. And while both Manitoba and Saskatchewan declared provincial states of emergencies, only one of them picked up the phone and asked for help. Just 15 minutes from here is the community of Flin Flon. Their premier called for additional resources, and Flin Flon received them. They received the support to the fire lines. The Premier of Saskatchewan, Premier Scott Moe and Tim McLeod, refused to do the same. Why didn't the Premier of our province pick up the phone and ask for more resources to help the hardworking frontline firefighters and local businesses here in Denare Beach? That's the question people have been asking me, of our office, and of this government time and again. And it's not the only failure. When people here were evacuated, they did everything right. They called the numbers, they signed up for the evacuation app, they went where they were told to go. And still, no support. No help while they were displaced, no help now that they've returned home. No clear direction from the provincial government on how to get assistance. No plan in place to get resources here so this community can begin to rebuild. People don't want empty words. They don't need any more empty promises. They need action, and they need support, and they need it now. That's what we're calling for. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Paul.
Hi, I'm a local contractor that decided to stay behind and help with the fire situations within our 3 communities. We had gathered up a few key people and geared up our water trucks and whatnot to join forces with the local fire departments. In the days leading up to June 2nd, the day that Denare Beach had burned, I tried to be a part of all the meetings that I could within Creighton and Flin Flon to see what the daily plans would look like, intel on the fire situations, and get a look at what resources each community had, and general interest in fire planning, and to see where we can help. I didn't attend any meetings at Denare Beach though, because at that time there was no emergency there. But it was very evident that Manitoba government had supported Flin Flon in many ways with extra help from outside the community. Several fire trucks arriving daily to stand with the Flin Flon departments, up to an estimated of 16 civil fire pumpers, Chinook helicopters, and water bombers arriving every day. Meanwhile, on the Saskatchewan side, Creighton was fighting fires daily on the 106 highway, with just their own fire department and some level 2 firefighters from the Denare Beach base. At most, I believe there was 2 extra fire teams from Saskatchewan that actually had fire trucks. I feel the SPSA had not pushed the buttons to action more resources, very little air support, and almost no extra fire teams. So in the the shortfalls that I could see from the SPSA was very low experienced personnel managing the fires to begin with, not bringing in more experienced ops leaders to assist until too late. Extreme lack of foresight monitoring the Wolf fire. It should have been quite evident of what could happen with the fuel in front of that fire and the forecasted extreme winds. There was no extra sprinkler gear for Denare Beach or fire retardant drops or ground crews spraying fire retardant, none of that. Minimal extra fire trucks were deployed. So Denare Beach was left to burn. With the lack of foresight, planning, and no resources, they were defenseless. Denare Fire Department was trying their best to prepare for the incoming fire, but with only 9 to 10 people on the department and very little equipment, they even tried sourcing some of their own sprinklers to set up where the SPSA couldn't supply. I know that Denare could have fared much better had there been more sprinklers and fire teams available. I'm not saying that it would have been saved completely, but the losses could have been minimized or much less had we had the help from the SPSA and the government.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Heisert, and I am from Denare Beach, Saskatchewan. I stand before you today with a heavy heart, having lost my home in the devastating wildfire that swept through our community. The Wolf Fire took nearly everything my family has built over the past 25 years. What makes this loss even more painful is learning that it could have been avoided. Our community did everything they could to protect our homes with minimal supplies and manpower. Our volunteer firefighters, local crews, and neighbors fought valiantly to save Denare Beach. We came together, showing up for each other with what little we had, but ultimately, we left to face this disaster alone. Just a few nights ago at the SPSA meeting in Creighton, we learned something truly alarming. Time and again, those on the ground asked for help from our government, and they were told no or simply ignored. Worse than that, I have been told the SPSA pulled vital resources days before the fire even reached our home. Meanwhile, just across the border, roughly 12 kilometers from us in Manitoba, their government called in the military and provided immediate support to their evacuees. Those of us in Saskatchewan received nothing. We are still waiting for answers, for help, and for basic support. I stand here without a home. And I don't want anyone else to experience the pain and loss that my family and I have endured. The Saskatchewan Party government abandoned us when we needed them most, and we cannot allow this to happen again. There is no reason for the government to not have a plan to save our community. There is no reason for them to not have a plan to help us clean up and rebuild. And there is no reason that 3/4 of my community is gone. We need help now, and I will not stop until we prove that, I will not stop until they prove that we matter to them. Thank you. Carl, would you like to say a word?
Due to the early times and that, council prepared the following for me to relay to the public here. And basically, on June 2nd, 2025, the village had experienced terrible and unprecedented disaster. As a council, we are devastated and heartbroken by the residents' losses of homes and businesses. As a community, while knowing it will be a long road to rebuild, we will do whatever it takes to do so. The strength, love, and support by our residents from outside the community and between the residents themselves has been overwhelming. To our volunteer fire department and those who came to support us in our times of need, your dedication and bravery are unprecedented. You have our hearts and utmost respect. Our little village will do what it does best to come together, support each other, and rebuild together. We're all in this together. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll see some changes and some forward movement. Some of it's already starting, and hopefully there'll be more to talk about what's transpiring. So we'll keep it short and sweet, and just from me to our community, I extend condolences for your losses. It's hard to comprehend. I had a life of working in hard jobs, and I can understand the feeling of the people. It's overwhelming, and it's going to take a while just to understand what's actually transpired. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Pardon?
We have a few moments now for questions from members of the media for our speakers. And then we'll break and have a chance to chat with everybody here.
I'll go first. Maybe the first one is, as everybody's sort of slowly trickling back, do you know maybe an estimated number of how many residents have returned at this point?
It's going to be in the 300 bracket thereabouts, but we can have that addressed from the office, and I know there's figures out there, but they may not be very accurate. And when you go around the community, it's, you know, the houses and the garages and everything else is equal, so it has to be done from the paperwork in the office with the tax rolls and so on.
And then maybe, I mean, the list is probably a mile long of all the things that have to be done, you know, step by step to rebuild, but is there one that's at kind of the top of the list, or maybe is, you know, slow to progress, or is really holding everything up in terms of the rebuild efforts?
Well, just to start with, when you look at all the damage that we have, the two things that have made some things possible now is the fact that the water plant and the sewer plant are functioning. If they weren't functioning, that alone would probably take 3 to 4 years to get rolling. As far as the community, the material that's been residue from the fire has to be removed. That comes with rules and environment legislation and so on. And like a lot of stuff, nobody's ever handled that before in that capacity, so there's going to be a learning curve. As far as what I see personally, is there are many venues of damage and concern to be dealt with, and each one has a myriad of things that you have to do. You know, things like the tax roll. That's just, when you think about it, it's mindless. It's just impossible to even figure out, you know. And so there's a lot of that type of thing. I've gone around the community once by myself, once with my wife, and it's really hard to comprehend. And I've done police work, I've done coroner work, and now mayor work. And it's massive, and I can understand the people and hope that we can make it through.
Carl, can you, I know the very purpose of this press conference is that government wasn't there when it was needed, but if government hasn't stood up, maybe people can help stand up. Is there anything you think that the village needs, or that Denare Beach could use from Flin Flon, Creighton, from anywhere else, any individual people? Is there anything anybody else can do to help?
Well, outside of council's views, my own view, somebody has to grab this situation. Our community area has had a lot of success over the years with mining, and that doesn't come through government principles. That comes through the people that are movers and shakers. Some of that has to go into the methods of government to ensure that we move along at a pace that's a little faster than the snail. And I don't mean to be critical, but hopeful.
Any question for anybody? I'm just wondering, what was the last sort of communication from the province about what's happening and what they're planning to do to help? Like, what are they telling you right now?
I've only been back a couple of days, so I don't have. When I left, I had been in the office. I was the only one there. There was some people that didn't leave the community. There was a couple of us that left. I wasn't going to leave. When I was at a person's place, and he came in the next morning, he went to save a cabin. I didn't even recognize him initially because he was out fighting his fire, and he suffered from the heat, and he was unrecognizable initially. And so the fire department was around here in different areas and so on. They're not a big group. They're a younger group.
I'd like to add to this a little bit, Carl, if you don't mind.
Pardon?
I'd like to add to this a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you. I left Denare Beach. I didn't ever want to leave, actually. I had signed paperwork to stay. So when the evacuation order came in on the 28th, my husband and I went up to our community plex and we signed paperwork stating that we were going to stay. We have a remote cabin that we were concerned about, and we wanted to help our community as we could. So I did, and I cooked for the fire guys for a couple of days and offered supports where we could. And then my husband's work called us away. And when that happened and we had to leave, we were told that we were to go to Winnipeg. And from there, we received no additional information. Out of common sense, I guess, I contacted the Red Cross. I never knew that the SPSA existed. The Red Cross didn't make me aware that the SPSA existed. I found out through some friends eventually to contact them, and I did. And we were really left with no information. We were just told to stay where we were, that it wasn't safe to come home, and that when it was, we would be notified. There were no support measures sent to us. I have anybody I know has not received or did not receive any help from anybody. And when we were told we could come home, there were so many obstacles. I know there's so many people who felt extra hurt even at that point because of border issues and propaganda. And when you've lost everything in your life, the last thing you need is somebody telling you you can't come through this road, or you have to drive around 12 hours and not take some scarring from that. And I think everybody here experienced some level of what I'm telling you.
I had a question for Jen or anybody. I know obviously it's early in the process, but is Creighton or Flin Flon, anybody stepped up, we're gonna do for some housing for people that need places to stay?
Perfect.
So I've been involved in the EOCs of many of these places, and the calls for resources for those communities has been very clear from every single one of the leaders. I've been on calls from Hall Lake, Saskatchewan, La Ronge, Arange, my home community, as well as Pelican Narrows and in Creighton and Denare. Before they had lost communications, I was able to go in on like a Teams or Zoom call and listen into some of the issues that we heard on the front line. And what was very clear is that the resources were needed long before the wolf or the club fire got to the communities. The province has a real role to play in this. The Provincial Disaster Assistance Program has in their temporary resheltering for people that have lost things due to natural disaster. This is their opportunity. They might not have gotten it right by supporting evacuees when they were displaced from their communities. They might not have gotten it right when it came to providing the resources to the front lines of these fire lines and support communities where they're at, but they have an opportunity to get this right and make sure that the people behind me have a very clear plan from a provincial government on how they're going to be supported as they rebuild their community. And they can do that through the Provincial Disaster Assistance Program. They just need to say yes to the people that I'm standing here with today.
When do we see that plan?
That's precisely what we're calling for today, is we need them to give you guys a plan.
I mean, it's time to start rebuilding.
I agree.
We're not allowed to move it off our property.
I agree.
Can I ask?
We've heard some, some pretty serious questions about resources being pulled or people's requests for help being denied while the fire was going and approaching the town. Like, how do you think the government should be held accountable, or should these questions be investigated like in an inquiry or something like that?
It's a great question. It's precisely why our team, I believe it was just last week, put forward a request to the Auditor General to investigate and look into how these fires were managed in northern Saskatchewan this year. We've yet to hear back whether or not we're going to see that investigation. But I think that the questions that many people, not only here in Denare Beach, but all across northern Saskatchewan, as these fires threaten their communities, when they found out there's 4 water bombers on the ground, again, the pilots and engineers, they've done their jobs, they've worked as hard as they can, but the government should have had a plan to backfill these resources to support communities and the fire lines across northern Saskatchewan. We haven't heard that from any single EOC that I've heard, that they've had more resources than what they needed. Every single one of them said they had less resources than what they needed, and the government needs to answer as to why that's the case.
Question for anybody here who is speaking, whether it be for you, Jordan, whether it be for you, Jen, whether it be for you, Paul, anybody. And it's a kind of a delicate question, so if you don't want to answer it, I understand. But the first time that you were able to come through Denare after the fire came through, what were some of the things that came to mind? What were some of the things that you saw? What did you think when you first saw Denare after the fire came through?
I was prepped before I drove into town. We had been given lots of video footage. I had friends who had already returned. I know that this is different for everybody. I had some people tell me that the drive down the highway was worse. I had some say that their husband was brought to their knees, men who are, the strongest of the strong and the miners of our country, brought to their knees in tears. For myself, when I got here, after just about a month of being away, I was happy to be home. even with everything gone. And all these people standing behind me makes me happy. And I want the pride of my community to be brought together fast. And so I asked Jordan to join me today and to help us get that. We're not getting answers we need. We're not getting the help we need without the support of the media and forcing this government to take action. That is our goal today, so that we can rebuild the devastation we lost.
I got a thing to add, Jordan, I know it's not on you, but how does this happen in Canada?
That is, I think, a really good question for Scott Moe and Tim McLeod. Again, we know that there was federal resources that were not being dispatched to Saskatchewan. We knew that the premier and the minister did not request that. We saw just like I said in my opening remarks, 15 minutes away, we saw that a provincial government brought in federal resources, and you can see the difference in approach to attacking a wildfire based on the amount of resources that you have. And so I think Scott Moe and Tim McLeod need to answer to the people as to why, in your very question, how does this happen in Canada when you didn't even involve the Canadian government, the Canadian Armed Forces, and Operation Lentis, and the many things that the military could have brought to the front lines of these fires?